Welcome to another edition of Subspace Brief Facts. Today we'll be continuing our look at the 32X CD games with Supreme Warrior. A 1994 release from Digital Pictures, one of the most prolific FMV game developers of the early to mid-90s, Supreme Warrior aims to drop the player into the shoes of a kung fu film protagonist. Unfortunately, it doesn't really succeed in that goal. However, it does have some positive qualities, and as we're in the business of remembering the happy things about games, we'll get to those first. Don't worry, it won't take long. Unquestionably, Supreme Warrior looks the part, and with good reason. As the game's credits proudly proclaim, it was a project filmed in association with Shaw Brothers, the largest film studio in Hong Kong at the time. If you've watched more than a handful of kung fu movies in your lifetime, there's a good chance that more than one of them was a Shaw Brothers film. Somehow, Digital Pictures was able to convince Shaw Brothers to work with them on Supreme Warrior, lending them the use of their studios, and I imagine more than a few actors. As a result, the setting of Supreme Warrior, without a doubt, is fantastic. It is by far the best part of the game. Locations, costumes, sound effects, everything is on point. Additionally, the 32X version of Supreme Warrior utilizes the extra power afforded by the 32X to give a nice boost to the visual fidelity. The fight choreography is fantastic too. While the action in Supreme Warrior takes place from a first-person perspective, all of the actors look to be more than competent in their martial arts ability. So Supreme Warrior undeniably succeeds in at least one aspect. It looks like an authentic kung fu movie. There's just one problem. You'll spend 95% of the game looking at the back of your character's finely manicured hands. And don't get me wrong here, they're nice hands, but, they really do tend to get in the way of all the awesome, well-produced kung fu action that may or may not be going on behind them. So why do we spend most of the time looking at the back of our knuckles? Well, like most FMV games, what Supreme Warrior wants you to do is respond to button prompts. As the battles play out, tiny punch and kick icons appear around the perimeter of the video, indicating which direction and attack button you have to hit to correspond to your opponent's move. A successfully timed button press will result in a hit, depleting your opponent's life.
You have awakened my rage, fool!
Supreme Warrior's button prompts, though, are pretty short, and mercilessly so on harder difficulty levels.
Your sister kisses toads!
If the game's remarkably uninformative tutorial videos are any indication, what the designers wanted you to do was carefully watch the action in front of you. The enemy's in close and they're dropping the guard on the right side of their face, hit them with a hook. They're at mid-range and they're not guarding their stomach, give them a swift kick.
You think you can beat me?
Now, from a purely theoretical standpoint, I can see why the developers thought this might work. It could make it seem like you were in a real fight. But it doesn't, because the bad guys are constantly hitting you back. This means you have to block, and unlike other actions in the game, blocking doesn't have its own button prompt. You've got to estimate when the attack that's coming your way would hit your character's face and thrust your hands forward by hitting the B button. Now, if you block right before the moment of impact, you'll gain a slight health boost, which would, in theory, be a nice little game mechanic. Timing your blocks properly creates a slight bonus for the player. Not a bad idea. However, this is remarkably hard to do with any reliability. You see, the martial arts routines that the actors put on are quite commendably varied and complicated. You could play the game for hours before learning what exactly is happening and what strike you have to do when. Or, since there's no penalty for a missed block, you can just wildly thrust your hands in front of your face, which will actually block all impact coming your way most of the time. The end result of this is that a gameplay session of Supreme Warrior is not unlike when you got into a childhood fight and put your hands in front of your eyes and blindly punched while running forward. It's not really all that heroic feeling. And on top of it, as should be manifestly apparent by now, this obscures all of the game's acting, rendering all of its positive qualities more or less impotent. I mean, seriously, the only thing missing here is an audio clip of your character screaming "not in the face" as he backs away in panic. It's a shame, too, because the designers clearly intended for the player to do more than just kick, punch, and block. Every time you defeat an enemy, you get a neat new special move, but if you're trying to beat the game, you'd have to be a crazy person to actually stop and try them. I played through this game several times in preparing this review, and I only ever used one of these special powers, the ability to regain your health. Everything else, I had no idea when to use it, and as randomly pressing block and punching and kicking when I saw prompts seemed to beat the game for me, never really tried them. So, there's more to Supreme Warrior, but no real point to trying it. Supreme Warrior is an interesting concept, and without a doubt, a game with great production values. Maybe it might be something that will be more at home at an arcade with some kind of specialized control setup, or maybe it's something that could be done better today with the aid of the enhanced processing power of modern machines. But, as it is, Supreme Warrior just kinda falls flat, and I have to think this is something that would hold true for any other release of the game, though I've only played the Sega 32X and Sega CD versions. And it's a real shame, too, because it's very clear that a lot of effort went into making sure that this was an authentic kung fu film experience. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, I suppose, but as it is, okay, we'll say on a scale from the Master Killer to Master of the Flying Guillotine, I'll give it a Dance of the Drunk Mantis. Until next time, this is Steve White for Subspace Briefcase, signing off. Stay away from opium, kids. It's a killer.